Hello, friends, and welcome back to Malicious Compliance Stories. Companies love at-will employment until they get reverse Uno carded. You did the right thing, OP. The boss fired you to keep their own job? Let them figure out the training. They're supposed to know anyway. But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you're new here and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. Here we go. I quit my job before they could fire me. So I found out I was getting fired from my job. I'm a mortgage underwriter by profession. With the way the economy is, I got laid off in June. I found a new job in August, but I really wasn't into it. Unlike my previous position, there wasn't any formal training at all, just a quick Zoom call with the previous person at my position. They also hired me a month before a massive deadline and gave me very little guidance on how to proceed. I had reservations about taking the role. It was a much lower salary than I had, and benefits sucked, but it was WFH, and the salary would be enough to cover my expenses. In the first month leading up to the deadline, I really tried. I stayed late into the night finishing projects, getting familiar with the financials, and trying to learn on my own. After that, I checked out of the job. I felt like they didn't care enough about this position to invest resources into structured training and expected me to figure it out on my own. Then why would I care? The last couple months passed with me going through the motions. Last week, big blow up. There was an error in the big project I completed in the first month. I fix it, but another error on a different task. This one, I know for sure isn't my fault. There was an Excel sheet with the wrong formula, which led to the data being completely off. Thing is, my boss told me to specifically change the existing formula to the one that was used. I remember because I thought that was weird, but didn't argue and did what I was told, because at that point, I didn't care. This week, very important and time-sensitive task. I'm on LinkedIn doing my customary scroll through available remote positions. I see my company posted a new position. Mine. I took a lunch break and went for a drive to clear my head and get some Chipotle. I come back, email from my boss. After you're done, please compile a list of your responsibilities, the projects you worked on, and the resources you used. This was needed for HR for new record-keeping process. So to sum it up, they worked me through the busiest time of the year with no training, were about to fire me and have me compile training materials for my replacement. So I decided to quit. I didn't do the task and spent the next 2 days eating pecan pie with coffee in front of my TV, catching up on some Netflix. At 1 p.m. on Thursday, I write a resignation email to all the bigwigs. Immediately, my phone is blowing up. My boss goes into the usual song and dance. Why? How could you? This is irresponsible. You're letting down the company and your coworkers. We've invested so much in you. You're supposed to give 2-week notice, etc. I pointed out to them that my offer letter when they hired me bolds and underlines the words at-will employment, wished them well, and hung up. Since then, I've gotten many more texts, calls, and emails. I remain steadfast. Edit. I didn't want to let them fire me because I didn't really want to deal with them. Besides, there were a couple of projects coming up that would have required a lot of work, constant calls to check up on me, and inevitably some last-minute changes I'd need to do. It's better for my mental health to just lie on the couch for a bit instead of doing all that. I also live in one of the worst states for unemployment benefits, so it wouldn't particularly help. I have savings and can find a job pretty quick if I drop the remote requirement, so I'm not worried about money. And our second story. Want to throw staff under the bus? Watch it fall back onto your family. I worked 5 years as a warehouse manager in a building that the head office was right above us. I worked with a CSR, let's call him Joe, and his father worked in the warehouse, let's call him Mark. We had a team of 30 people in the warehouse, and we had just had our online business active for about 1 year now. Before that, our main source of business was picking transfers for stores and really just stocking the stores. We finally opened the online part of our business. This is back in 2015, so we would also sell similar products on the web. The problem is that if a store got all the product picked of one thing while a web order came in for the same, then we'd be at a loss because we don't have enough for the customer. It would already be scanned by an employee and packed on a skid. Not worth digging an hour to find a $10 product. Anyhow, Joe and Mark were both infamous for throwing people under the bus for their own personal gain. It almost seemed that they would do it whether it was a personal gain or not. They were just lowlives, the people I would consider losers. They both worked in the business for 10 years plus, and they were both entry-level positions since they were toxic and not promotable. One time I get to a meeting upstairs organized by my boss, CFO, the customer service manager, and the 3 CSRs. It turned out to be kind of an ambush because Joe walked in with a stack of paperwork. I was new at the time, about 4 months into the job. We talked about the online business and where we did well, but ultimately where we fell short. Joe then dropped the stack of paper, pointed at me, and said, "This is a stack of issues that your staff have done in the past year." Literally a list of things even from before I was employed. He basically said that the warehouse didn't know what they were doing as the stack included mispicks, incorrect quantities shipped, and other issues. I had said this is the first time I've heard of any issues. Why would he not bring those issues up one by one so we can fix the concern or see where the issue lies and address it to correct future ones rather than wait for them all to pile up and become more issues? I said this and then said, "So wait, you were intentionally holding off on information that could have helped this business so you can collect enough data to try and make someone lose their job instead?" Joe said, "Someone should be fired for this." CFO quickly disagreed, but I said, "You know what? I will have to look at these issues and address with staff." So I took the stack and went downstairs. I found something interesting. No issues were brought about specific errors from the department Mark works at, his dad, so I went and asked the CFO if Joe could provide me details on each department, specifically Department 35 and 40, which were our laboratory and LTL shipment business. Both are Mark's position. Eventually, Joe took a week, so I had the CFO ask again. He gave me a few issues, but tried to sugarcoat it. The thing is, Joe had given me a few small issues with a customer we don't deal with anymore. Apparently, this customer dropped us as we had tons of logistical issues. So I called the customer and said I was a new manager trying to find ways to improve and wanted to know what happened. When the customer happily gave me a list of issues, I found it was all Mark that created the errors. In fact, we lost 3 high-valued customers due to it. So I went to the CFO and got approved to terminate with a bare minimum package. Joe and Mark lived together. Mark was the person paying for the mortgage. When Joe found out I was terminating his dad, he came to me and talked to me personally about it. He said, "Listen, my intent wasn't to get anyone terminated. It's simply to make sure we function well as a company." I said, "Joe, I appreciate your concern, but you made it very clear in the meeting that someone needs to lose their position, and I found several issues where an employee had clearly made us lose 3 high-value customers, and he's still creating issues to this day." Joe said, "Okay, but termination is a stretch." I said, "I don't know how you found out I was going to possibly terminate someone in the first place, but I do what I must to simply make sure we function well as a company." I played dumb, that I didn't know they were related, to the point where after I terminated Mark and officially was told they were son and father, I'd gone to Joe and said, "I'm sorry, I did not know you two were related. If I'd known, then I would see why you were hiding information on the department intentionally." Over my time there, Joe had tried to do the same thing, and I eventually got him to a final written warning based on staff harassment. He still works there as a CSR, will never move up in the company, has his age capped. I don't enjoy terminating individuals, especially when it's a parent who needs to provide for their family, but this duo, F them. Messing around where you work is just stupid. This was just a case of play stupid games, win stupid prizes. Their surprised Pikachu face when they got caught's just a bonus. And our last story. This happened when my grandfather was growing up in rural Kansas in the 40s and 50s, and is one of my favorite stories from him. Story. When my grandpa was growing up, he didn't have electricity, this being rural Kansas. What they did have was a wood-burning stove. At one point, firewood that great-grandfather had been storing began to disappear. A thief was afoot. My great-grandfather, getting tired of the firewood disappearing, hatches a plan. Great-grandfather takes some of the logs and drills them out, leaving a cavity. He then puts some gunpowder in the cavity and plugs the holes to hide his handiwork. That night, he tells my grandpa that he would bring in the firewood. Of course, he knows what logs he's messed with. Now, this is the funny part, and I wish I knew how embellished it was, but stranger things have happened. The next day, great-grandfather is walking into town and comes across a gentleman also headed into town, and they get to talking. Turns out the gentleman's going to town to make a purchase. The item he seeks? A new stove. He says to my grandfather, "I don't know what they're putting in the coal these days, but it destroyed my stove." No wood ever went missing again. And our second story. Oh, you wanted a clean car. At my job, we have a small carpool. I've started to notice that every time I have to drive somewhere, the cars would either be with some mechanical problem, without gas, dirty and messy, mud, old yogurt bottles, papers, old parts, etc. I've told again and again my coworkers that it's common courtesy to report those problems when they're found, to make an appointment to clean the car, which has no cost. We just have to check with the cleaner if he's available and give him the keys, and to leave the car with the tank full. Again, no cost, as the cars have their own card. I also noticed that I was always the one who made the appointment with the car cleaning company and reported the mechanical problems to the central car management. Since lately I'm doing more of an office job, I've stopped making any kind of appointment. It's been 3 months and the cars are filthy. One of them isn't even suitable to use. It doesn't close. Let's see how long my coworkers can drive in their own filth. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.